Hi, my name is Dale Garland and I'm an audiovisual technician at the Museum of London. I'm responsible for the live streaming and video production elements of what we do, and I'd like to take you through some of the advanced live streaming setups that we're using. So I'd like to start off by talking about the New Museum Conversations. These are a series of lectures that we run within the museum that focus on specific issues surrounding the transition to the new museum location. So each of the conversations requires presenters to be able to present onto the main screen and for the audience to be able to have a Q&A session with them. We have to be able to stream to multiple locations so that audiences in different areas can also be part of it. So I need to be able to control multiple video inputs and audio and video content from laptops. I need to be able to send it out to a screen, and I need to be able to broadcast this at the same time. I also wanted to make the rig compact and transportable so that we could move this around quite easily and use it for a number of events as well. Here's a little snippet of a previous conversation.
Thanks, Lucy, and thanks so much everyone for coming, and also thank you to Beatrice who invited me in the first place. So as Lucy said, I'm currently a postdoc fellow at the University of Glasgow, and I am researching the use of technology in neglected heritage sites. So I just saw the Beasts exhibit, which was very useful to me in that regard. But today I'm actually talking about some of the research from my PhD, which I finished last year, as Lucy said, and especially I'm talking about the Smithfield Memorial to the Scottish medieval hero Sir William Wallace, which is very near to the site of the new museum, as I'm sure you all know. So I'm going to begin by explaining something about who William Wallace was and why there is a memorial to this Scottish hero in London. And then I want to talk about why this memorial is a particularly interesting example of active commemoration. And then finally, I want to think about two aspects of the memorial that I think are most relevant to you here, thinking about the new museum.
So I'd like to give you a bit more of an in-depth look at the technical aspects of what we're doing here. So the rig contains two wireless lapel mics at the top and then a plant mic which broadcasts wirelessly. We've also got wireless IEMs that we can send audio out. The audio interface in the middle brings all the audio together, and there's a video switcher at the bottom. So on the left here we have a wireless lapel mic. So that pack lets us attach the mic to the presenter, and then on the right hand side is the IEM, so that receives audio that's being sent out, so we can send music or audio from video. When the presenters are presenting from the laptop, we give them a wireless clicker, and then we have to take a video feed and an audio feed from their computer and transmit that back to the rig. So on the right hand side here you can see there is an audio feed and there are two VGA inputs, so one takes the video in, another one sends the output to the screen, and then we can take all of those signals via an internet cable back to the rig. Here's another useful video device that we use sometimes. It allows us to resynchronize video signals and convert them from HDMI inputs into SDI inputs. This can be useful for long signal runs. So one of my intentions with this setup was to have it work in a modular way. So one of the advantages here, you can see that we're using it with another project for Ashley, where we can extend on the capabilities of his setup to bring more microphones in and more video capabilities. You can also see here another rig that we've built, very similar, which just has more wireless microphones. So we can do bigger events and combine the two rigs together to achieve more. In terms of conferencing and live events, there's definitely been a growing demand for live streaming to be included. For these kind of events, instead of using a rig, we tend to use built-in systems within our studios. So we've started to integrate more and more of the live streaming side of things into our usual workflows. So here you can see a Roland V1 HD video controller at the top there. We're using this quite often now, so we can take multiple HDMI inputs and switch between them. So you can see on the monitoring screen here, we've got the 3 camera inputs, and we're taking a feed from what we would normally send to the projector. So then this can be output to a video adapter, which then goes to a computer. and we can connect that to something like OBS Studio. All of the audio and the regular in-house kind of video switching and stuff like that, that's handled by our usual setup, which you can see here. And here in the theatre you can see we're using 3 DSLR cameras which are sending video signals over Ethernet cable to the theatre booth, so we can control multiple cameras remotely. So I think an important thing to talk about is how we've responded to the pandemic, because we've had to adapt quite a lot over the last year and innovate and come up with some new systems and new ways of doing things. So City of Refugees was the first project we tried some new ideas out. It was an event that was scheduled for Refugee Week, and we wanted to bring together some refugees to talk about their own stories. In this instance, we couldn't get everyone together to have a panel discussion, so we went through some pre-production and decided to meet up, keep socially distanced from each other, and record some question and answers and some responses from each of the speakers beforehand. One of our speakers wasn't able to meet up with us because he had to go to another city, so we asked him to record on his phone remotely, and then we brought everything together in post and then had a live event.
Good evening everyone, and a warm welcome from the Museum of London, coming to you from our homes to yours. We're delighted to share our first online event with you this evening, City of Refugees in Conversation. Tonight's event is part of Refugee Week 2020, which is also breaking new ground with an entirely digital programme this year.
What are some of the challenges you faced when you first arrived in London?
To be absolutely honest, I've always been very lucky since the day I arrived to London. I was always surrounded by good friends who helped me. But of course, I had to face some difficulties like everybody else did. I think my biggest issue was getting my visa. It was the hardest, longest and most boring process ever.
So one thing I really love about London is the diverse and incredible food scene. What do you think about food in London, and do you still cook and eat Syrian food?
Yeah, well, I still eat and cook Syrian food, even though I teach actually some Syrian dish to the public here in London, and that's through my Grateful. This is another such a like a great, a fantastic charity who's supporting the asylum seeker and refugee.
The next event that really challenged us was an event for our Havering Hoard exhibition. So Havering Hoard explores a Bronze Age hoard that was discovered, and we wanted to have a panel discussion and some traditional lecture presentations, but at the time, with COVID security measures in place, we couldn't have an audience in there, so we had to massively reduce the numbers of people that were allowed in and find a way to reach an external audience.
This discovery is a really important discovery for London. It's the largest Bronze Age hoard found in London, and it also gives us a lot of evidence that helps us to reconstruct what life was like for the people who lived and worked in this area.
So this event combined pre-production, post-production, live broadcast, and we had to have one of our speakers, part of the panel discussion, dialing in remotely via Zoom. So you can see we've socially distanced all the chairs, and the number of audience members is much lower than anything we'd normally have. There's a screen at the back to the left that is for the remote speaker to be part of the presentations. And here we see a similar setup to what we've seen already, with the HDMI inputs, 3 camera angles and the main presentation screen. Sound and lights are controlled by the in-house controls.
Hello, everyone. Delightful to see you all. Welcome back to the Museum of London Docklands for our first on-site event since March. It's felt like a very long time, so thank you all for coming, and it's a lovely pleasure to see you here. And hello also, I'm going to wave to the cameras, to the people who are joining us from home.
What that means is that with what can seem like relatively low sample size, we can make quite robust inferences about populations and population change through time. Genetic studies of Europe during the Neolithic and Europe during the Bronze Age have identified that these are major periods of population change. So during the Neolithic, when you get the introduction of farming practices across Europe, it's accompanied to varying extents by the introduction of ancestry, which originates around the Aegean and in Anatolia. And as you can see through time.
Bronze Age, but of course we have no records of the names. Do you know how old? What are the first records that we have of those marshes being named in that way?
Yeah, Kate, no, unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that one, I'm afraid. We kind of refer to the sort of marshes as having this kind of medieval sort of landscape to them. So I think we can certainly say back to the kind of late medieval period, but earlier than that, I'm not sure.
Excellent. Jane, can you add a little something?
I'm going to chip in. I don't know for detail, but Ham is a Saxon place name, and Ton is also a Saxon place name. So I suspect that they do go back further.
So to conclude, I just wanted to cover a few things that I think I can see changing in terms of what's happening with live streaming and where things are going in the future. One thing to look out for is the new software called vMix, which is quickly becoming the industry standard. It is PC only at the moment, but it plays much of a similar role as OBS Studio would. And we're now taking a new direction with live streaming because we're going to start using Vimeo, because we can integrate it with a system called Spectrix, which is for ticketing, so we can create a paywall and make it easier for us to kind of control how the audience accesses the content. So we can create password protected links that people have to pay for. Obviously, we're still using the traditional systems like YouTube Studio. That's tried and tested, and we know that that works for many things, particularly when we're doing educational broadcasts. Another streaming platform to be aware of is Restream. This allows you to stream to multiple platforms at once. So you can link Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, lots of different platforms all at the same time. You can even stream directly from their web program, so you don't need to use another external piece of software. It makes it very easy to do large scale streams to multiple audience members. And of course, it's a household name now that everybody knows. Zoom has become the king of streaming and conferencing and video chatting. Looks like there's a few more features that are going to be added to this, and you've also got integration with Rooms and other systems like Crestron. Thank you for listening. I hope that was useful for you. There's a lot more depth I could go into with things. There's so much to talk about there, but that goes beyond the scope of what we can do here now. I hope it just gives you an idea of the kind of things you can do further down the line.